Hello everyone, and welcome back to the North Pole. Oh goodness gracious, how you've grown since last year. I think you've grown about 2 or 3 inches so far. Keep up the good work. And Haley, are you missing a couple of front teeth this year? What's going on? Give me a nice smile. There you go. Well, welcome back to the North Pole. You know, the elves are very, very busy getting all of the toys done for Christmas, and Mrs. Claus is making all of the candy canes and her famous gingerbread cookies. Everybody's working very hard up here. And we're getting ready for Christmas Eve, and we're keeping our eye on the weather because, you know, last Christmas Eve, we almost weren't able to take off with the reindeer because we had a terrible winter storm. I don't know if you know Borius, but Borius is the wind of the north, and when he gets angry, he blows up a storm. And last Christmas Eve, there was such a terrible storm. The wind was so howling, and the snow was so heavy that Santa couldn't see the North Star on top of the Christmas tree in the town green. I didn't think that I was going to be able to deliver all the toys on Christmas Eve. And, you know, Santa was very sad to think that the children would wake up Christmas morning without any toys. Well, Santa sat down and he was thinking about what could he do? What could he do to be able to deliver all the toys in time for Christmas morning? And Santa Claus, as Mrs. Claus saw Santa sitting there looking so sad, and she brought him over a mug of his favorite hot chocolate and sat down beside him and held his hand and said, "You know, Santa, every time we have a winter storm, it's because Boreas is angry about something. Maybe you should find out what's bothering Boreas and he can stop the storm so that you can deliver all the presents." Well, Santa thought, and he knew Mrs. Claus was right, but you know, the North Mountain is very, very high. And with that storm and all of the snow, it would be a very dangerous climb. But you know, Mrs. Claus was right, so Santa decided that he had to do it. So as he was putting on his warm jackets, Mrs. Claus was making him a fresh mug of warm hot chocolate and putting some of her gingerbread cookies in a bag for him to have along the way for a snack. And off Santa went. He took his staff and he climbed past the town center with a Christmas tree and the North Star light on top of it, and past the elves' workshop and up the knoll where they saw the snow bunnies dance last year. Remember the snow bunnies dance from the story last year? Well, we went past the knoll and walked up the mountain, and finally we got to the base of the mountain. And Santa looked up, and oh my goodness, was the mountain so high, and it looked so dangerous. But I thought that I needed to have a little snack before I stepped on. So Santa opened up his pack, and he had a nice long swig of the hot chocolate and nibbled on a gingerbread cookie. And Santa thought that he could see somebody looking at him. And Santa looked around, and all of a sudden, he saw the little black nose of a snow bunny. And oh, the snow bunny looked so cold. He was sitting there shivering in the snow, and Santa knew that he lost his way. So Santa grabbed the snow bunny and warmed him in his mittens and gave him a little gingerbread cookie to nibble on so the snow bunny could gain the strength back. And Santa thought, you know, if I put him in my knapsack next to the hot chocolate, the bunny will stay warm, and I'll bring him home after I visit Boreas at the top of the mountain. So that's what Santa did. And up the mountain he climbed, and oh my goodness, Santa was glad that he had his Santa staff with him, because the rocks and the boulders were all in the way, and they were all icy because the cold north wind had turned the snow into ice. Oh, it was so slippery. Santa slipped a few times on the way up. So finally, after what seemed to be a long time, Santa climbed up to the top of the mountain, and he was at the bottom of Boreas's castle. Oh my goodness, was Boreas's castle tall. And there at the top of the castle was Boreas, and he was blowing up a storm. Who took my cookies? Who took my cookies? Oh my goodness, he was creating such a force. So Santa started knocking on the door with his staff. Boom, boom, boom. Borius, open the door. Who was there? Blew Borius. It's Santa. I need you to stop blowing. I won't be able to deliver all the boys and girls' toys Christmas Eve. What are you blowing about? What has you so mad? So Borius stopped blowing and he came down to the bottom of the castle, opened the door, and Santa said, Borius, what are you so angry about? And Borius said, somebody stole my cookies and I'm hungry. Well, Santa knew that Borius probably ate the last cookie himself and he didn't remember it. So Santa said, Borius, I've got some of Mrs. Claus's gingerbread cookies right here, and I'll give them to you, and that will satisfy your cookie tooth, and I'll bring you some more when I'm delivering the presents to the boys and girls. But I need you to stop blowing up a storm, because Santa can't deliver all the presents with a storm like this. So Borius agreed. And off Santa went down the mountain, past the elves' workshop, past the Christmas tree with the North Star, into the stable where the elves were waiting with the sleigh all loaded up with the Christmas presents and the reindeer all connected, and Mrs. Claus was standing there with a blanket and a mug full of hot chocolate and a bag full of Christmas cookies for Borius. And Santa went up to Mrs. Claus and gave her a hug and said, you know, Mrs. Claus, your gingerbread cookies saved Christmas this year. Thank you. He gave Mrs. Claus a peck on the cheek, and he climbed up in the sleigh, getting ready to take off. And just as he was ready to go, he remembered the snow bunny. So he yelled over his shoulder, Mrs. Claus, will you please make sure that the snow bunny in my backpack gets home safely? And Mrs. Claus agreed. Santa sat straight up in his chair and brought his arm back with his ribbon sleigh whip and said, on Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer, on Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, on Blitzen. And off they went into the night to deliver all the Christmas presents for all the boys and girls. And that's how Mrs. Claus's famous gingerbread cookies saved Christmas last year. 'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and my in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprung from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eye should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment that it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now fly away, fly away, fly away all. As dry leaves before the wild hurricanes fly, when up they meet the obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. When then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys was flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up in a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of his pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly, yet shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was a chubby, plump, right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, and then turned with a jerk. And laying a finger on the side of his nose, giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him explain, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Well, that was quite a story. And it was interesting to see how Mr. Moore thought that Santa Claus looked when he saw him in the middle of Christmas Eve so many, many years ago. Well, thank you for listening to the story. And before I go, I'd like to share my hope for you is that this year we all treat each other nice and with respect. And that, there's a lot of people that might be hurting this year because they don't have enough to eat. And Santa Claus makes Santa Claus sad to think that there are children and adults that may not have enough to eat this year. And I was wondering if when you're making your Christmas list and you're getting your Christmas cards ready to send out, if maybe you could think about those less fortunate and consider giving a gift to your local food pantry or your church who may run a food pantry so that everybody can have enough to eat this holiday season. Well, that's my wish and my hope. And I'm so happy that you came to visit me this year, and it'll be interesting to see how much you've grown next year. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to all. Happy holidays.